I unlocked my apartment door expecting nothing more than another unbearable night in the middle of the worst heatwave our city had seen in decades. The hallway smelled like overheated concrete, the lights flickered from the strain on the electrical grid, and sweat soaked through my shirt before I even stepped inside. Then I heard a hesitant knock. When I opened the door, my roommate stood there wrapped in a thin robe, her face flushed from the suffocating heat, holding a pillow against her chest. Her apartment's air conditioner had died only minutes earlier, and with exhausted eyes that looked far more frightened than embarrassed, she quietly asked if she could sleep in my room for just one night. I had no idea that simple request would uncover years of hidden pain, change both of our lives forever, and teach me that sometimes the hottest nights create the strongest bonds between broken hearts. Before we continue this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us how ordinary moments can completely change a life. The heatwave had become the only thing anyone talked about. Every weather report warned people to stay indoors, drink water, and avoid unnecessary movement. The city felt like it had been placed inside an enormous oven. Even after sunset, the temperature barely dropped. My apartment was small, but the old window air conditioner still worked well enough to keep one room reasonably cool. I had spent the evening filling bottles with ice water and placing wet towels around the apartment to help lower the temperature. I figured I would survive another miserable night like everyone else. My roommate, Emily, had lived across the hallway for nearly 18 months. We weren't strangers, but we weren't especially close either. We occasionally shared groceries, accepted deliveries for one another, and sometimes talked in the hallway after work. She always seemed cheerful on the outside, yet there was a sadness behind her smile that never completely disappeared. I noticed little things over time. She rarely invited anyone over. She avoided talking about family. Holidays usually found her staying home alone. Whenever someone asked personal questions, she gently changed the subject. When she stood at my doorway that night, I realized she looked different than usual. It wasn't simply the sweat running down her face or the exhaustion caused by the heat. She looked defeated, like someone who had been carrying far too much weight for far too long. I immediately carried her pillow and blanket inside while she thanked me repeatedly, apologizing for disturbing me. I told her no apology was necessary. No one should have to spend a dangerous night in an apartment that felt hotter than the outside air. I spread extra blankets across the floor beside my bed while she insisted she would be perfectly comfortable there. The room wasn't luxurious. It barely fit a bed, a dresser, and a small desk, but compared to the furnace waiting across the hall, it felt like paradise. We turned the lights off, leaving only the quiet hum of the air conditioner filling the room. For several minutes neither of us slept. The silence somehow felt heavier than any conversation. Eventually she admitted that she hadn't just been worried about the heat. The broken air conditioner had triggered memories she thought she had buried forever. As a child, she had grown up in a house where summer nights meant fear instead of comfort. Her parents fought constantly, and every argument seemed louder whenever the power went out. She remembered lying awake, praying morning would come before another door slammed or another cruel word echoed through the house. Ever since then, hot nights had always reminded her of those memories. Losing her air conditioner wasn't simply inconvenient. It made her feel like that frightened little girl all over again. Listening in the darkness, I realized everyone carries invisible battles. People often assume strength means never needing help, but sometimes true strength is knocking on someone's door and admitting you can't face the night alone. Her story encouraged me to reveal something I had hidden for years as well. I told her about losing my older brother during college. He had been my best friend, the person who always believed life would get better no matter how difficult things became. After he died unexpectedly, I built emotional walls around myself. I became independent to a fault, convincing myself that relying on anyone else only created opportunities for future heartbreak. Living alone felt safer than risking another painful loss. The hours slipped by as two people who had barely spoken beyond polite greetings slowly shared pieces of themselves they had never trusted anyone else with. Outside, the city remained trapped beneath relentless heat, but inside that tiny room something far more important began to thaw. Morning arrived with another unbearable forecast. Repair companies were overwhelmed, and every appointment was delayed by several days. Emily's apartment remained dangerously hot. Without hesitation, I suggested we temporarily share my apartment until her air conditioner could be replaced. She resisted at first, worried about invading my space, but eventually accepted after realizing there were few safe alternatives. The following days changed everything. Instead of living separate lives connected only by a hallway, we started functioning like an unexpected team. We cooked simple meals together because using the stove for too long made the apartment warmer. We played old card games during rolling power outages. We laughed over melted ice cream and complained about weather reports that promised relief but never delivered it. For the first time in years, coming home actually felt comforting instead of routine. One afternoon I returned from work to find Emily sitting quietly by the window with tears streaming down her face. She had received a phone call informing her that the apartment complex wouldn't help pay for the replacement unit. She had already exhausted her savings covering medical bills for her mother before she passed away the previous year. Buying a new air conditioner simply wasn't possible. Without telling her, I contacted several neighbors. What surprised me most wasn't their willingness to help but how many already cared about her. The elderly couple downstairs remembered her carrying groceries for them every week. A single mother described how Emily regularly babysat without charging anything. Another neighbor explained that Emily secretly left food outside the door whenever someone in the building became sick. Within 2 days, nearly everyone contributed something. Some offered money. Others donated fans, tools, or labor. One retired electrician volunteered to install the new unit for free. Watching neighbors unite reminded me that kindness spreads quietly, often without recognition, until one day it returns multiplied beyond imagination. When the new air conditioner finally hummed to life, Emily cried harder than she had the day it broke. She wasn't crying because of cold air. She was overwhelmed by discovering she wasn't nearly as alone as she had believed. The heatwave eventually ended. Rain finally arrived one evening, washing months of dust from the streets. Most people celebrated cooler temperatures and quickly moved on with their lives. Yet something inside both of us had changed permanently. We didn't stop having dinner together simply because her apartment became livable again. Movie nights continued. Weekend grocery trips became tradition. Slowly, almost without noticing, our friendship deepened into something built on trust rather than convenience. Several months later another challenge appeared. My company announced major layoffs. My position disappeared with little warning. I sat in stunned silence after packing my desk, terrified that everything I had worked toward had suddenly collapsed. Driving home, I kept wondering how I would afford rent or what came next. When I walked through the apartment door, Emily somehow knew before I spoke. She had prepared dinner and simply sat beside me while I processed everything. She reminded me that one difficult chapter didn't define an entire life. She helped rewrite my resume, searched job postings late into every night, and refused to let me sink into hopelessness. For the first time since losing my brother, I truly understood what it meant to let someone carry part of your burden. 3 months later I accepted an even better position than the one I had lost. Standing outside our apartment building after my first day, I looked toward the same hallway where she had once stood wrapped in a robe during that unbearable heatwave. I realized that if her air conditioner had never broken, we might have remained nothing more than neighbors exchanging polite smiles forever. Life rarely announces its greatest blessings. They often arrive disguised as inconvenience, discomfort, or unexpected interruption. We spend so much time wishing difficult moments would disappear that we forget some of them are quietly introducing us to the people who will eventually help heal our hearts. Years passed, and whenever summer returned with rising temperatures, we always remembered that unforgettable night. We laughed about how embarrassed she had felt standing at my door, and how nervous I had been about sharing such a small space. Looking back, neither of us remembered the discomfort nearly as much as we remembered the conversation that lasted until sunrise. That single act of asking for help transformed two lonely people into lifelong companions who learned that healing doesn't always happen through dramatic miracles. Sometimes healing begins with a gentle knock on a familiar door and the courage to trust another human being with your vulnerability. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of someone who showed you kindness during your darkest days, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more emotional stories that celebrate hope, compassion, and second chances. Before the story ends, please leave a comment below and tell us, have you ever experienced one small act of kindness that completely changed your life? We'd love to read your story. As I look back now, I no longer remember that heatwave as the hottest summer of my life. I remember it as the season when two lonely neighbors discovered that home isn't defined by walls, furniture, or working air conditioners. Home is the place where someone opens the door when you need them most, asks nothing in return, and reminds you that no matter how difficult life becomes, you never have to face the longest night alone. And sometimes, the greatest love stories don't begin with grand gestures or perfect timing. They begin with quiet compassion, shared silence, and one simple request for a safe place to sleep. Those are the moments that stay with us forever, proving that kindness has a remarkable way of turning ordinary nights into unforgettable beginnings.